This is the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose, teaching influencers and bloggers how to become successful entrepreneurs. This is episode 138 of the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose. Today, I am talking to Mai-kee, Tsang, and we are diving into product launch process. She's going to give you a 3-step process when it comes to launching, as well as she's going to talk about her freebie. And you guys, I cannot emphasize this enough. You have to click through in the show notes. Her freebie on the product launch framework and how to make it a profitable launch is one that you do not want to miss. So make sure that you head over to the show notes to grab that, and let's dive into this interview. All right. Hi, Mai-kee. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing so good. Thank you so much for having me on, Jenny.
I am so excited to get to introduce you to my audience and for them to really dive into this whole idea of launching. Can you introduce yourself and a little bit about your business before we really get into the nitty-gritty of launching?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi, everybody. Oh my God, I just said that totally weirdly. Hey, everybody. Alrighty. So, my name is Mai-kee Tsang, as Jenny mentioned, and I am a launch strategist and conversion copywriter. So, what that basically means is that I am at the forefront of online course launches and group program launches, memberships, you name it. I'm actually at the forefront and just understanding what it takes to be able to launch an idea and make it a reality. And of course, for it not to flop, because there's a lot of lessons that I've learned from being in these trenches of launching. And I really want to be able to relay that back to you today as we speak about what is this mythical beast of launching. So that gives you a base idea. And I do love working with purpose-driven entrepreneurs, which just means that, I love working with people who have quite an eye for the future and just, want a bigger impact more than their bank account, but also on their corner of the world.
Yes. And providing that solution, right? That solution for their audience. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. And where are you based?
I'm based in London. I'm not quite sure if you can tell from apparently I have an accent, but because I'm so close to my own voice, I can't hear it. But when Jenny and I first met, she was like, oh my God, I love your accent.
I'm very excited that y'all are going to get to hear it because, of course, you're used to my mix up of an accent being from New York and now down in North Carolina. So very good. Yes. All right. So let's talk about launching, because I think that I've had a lot of my audience has started to think about, okay, what's a product or service that I can offer to my audience? And then once they get that product or service, it's like total overwhelm because they hear this whole thing. You've said it great about this mythical beast of launching. So what would you say are like the first steps to make it less overwhelming?
Okay. So the first of all is to validate your offer. So the thing is, I turned down a lot of clients or people who would have been my clients when they tell me that they want to launch a product, but they haven't researched it. They haven't asked their audience, or they don't even have an audience. And I'm like, oh, that's really going to make your launch journey pretty much like an uphill battle. So actually I have this is going to be different than what we are going to talk about later, but this is my signature framework that I have for all of my launch packages. And it is the 3 stages, and it's called the Black Belt Ethos. And I can tell you a bit of history about that if you'd like me to, but just in a nutshell, the first phase is called H-to-H touch. So that's all about human to human connection. And that is when you do listen to your audience. You don't just listen, but you actually actively seek them out and you ask them. Send out surveys to your email list. Get on one-on-one calls, and that is where the real gems are, when you actually ask them these questions. And the thing is, not a lot of people are willing to do that because it's not exactly a scalable thing unless you do have a team. But I do highly recommend that if you are the course creator, to actually get on these calls yourself, because then you are going to hear directly from the people that you want to serve. So that is the first stage. It's all about the research and the voice of customer data that you can get from these surveys, from these interviews, and even like, for example, if you have name a business for me, Jenny, just so that I can give an example.
No, absolutely. A nutritionist that is putting together a detox course.
Okay, detox course. So if I was a nutritionist and I wanted to launch, I'd want to see what are the biggest issues. So this is called Amazon review mining. When if I would just go to Amazon and I would just research detox books and I look at, the number one bestsellers, and then the gold, Jenny, is in the reviews. Look at what people are actually saying, because the thing is, there can be a lot of, I like to call it Chinese whispers. I can pull it off because I'm Chinese, but like there's Chinese whispers out here in the marketplace where we say something, but people just hear different things. And we want to be able to bridge that gap of communication, right? And that actually happens when we go into these reviews and we actually start actively speaking with the people we want to serve. So for example, if you were going to do that for a detox book, if you're a nutritionist, you look at the 3-star reviews, not the 5-star reviews or the 1-star. You look at the 3 stars. Why? It's because 3 stars, they have something good to say, but they have an area of improvement. That is the gap that you need to fill. And that there's so much gold in there, right there. So that is where I would definitely start. And so that is phase 1. Phase 2 is brand DNA. So this is something that I walk through with my clients, because the thing is, a lot of people can get caught in that research phase and then they end up just sounding like their audience. And you think that is the goal, and a part of it is. But what if you lose your own voice in the process, right? That's a big no-no, because then anyone can technically do this, but you're in business for a reason. You stand out for a reason. And so, give people a reason to come to you. And so that is when your own personality comes out. That's your brand DNA. Is when it is your personality that you're fully embracing who you are, what your business stands for, your values, your story, your mission. That is all encompassed in your brand DNA, is what makes you you. And then, and only then, is your signature creation. So those are the 3 stages. H to H touch, research. Number 2 is brand DNA, which is, really owning who you are. And then number 3 is your signature creation. So don't create first, do your research first, because the amount of launch flops that happen because people do this in the wrong order is phenomenal. And it really breaks my heart, because some people just give up when their first launch fails, because some people just ride everything on their launches. And, that is not a good idea, because the thing is, even if you do everything right, unfortunately, there's just going to be some things that are always out of your control. And so, there's something that we can't help. But, this is why you want to learn as many countermeasures as possible to be able to prevent as much possibility of launch flop as possible. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm just going in circles.
No, you're not going in circles at all. It's actually perfect. I think one of the biggest things that I see with clients is that they expect to build it and people will come, right? They don't have that audience already built in. So I loved that you said about getting on one-on-one calls, because honestly, a large part of my audience are bloggers, and that intimidates the crap out of them, because they're so used to hiding behind their computer screen, being able to do all of their content. And it's not necessarily that they don't know how to hold a conversation, because they totally do, but it's intimidating, right? But like you said, that is gold when you can get on a call with your ideal audience and find out from them, what are your problems? How can I solve them? And just even understanding the language that they use, because often the way that you're going to sell it is using their language back to them. The other piece that you said about the Amazon reviews, someone said something to me about that years ago and I had forgotten it, but the way that you explained it is genius. Looking at those 3-star reviews, oh my goodness, that's exactly where I'm going. I love that. So smart. Oh my goodness. Okay. So that makes it so that it's not quite so overwhelming. You know that you actually have the ability, you have the audience that's built in for your launch. So now, first steps for going to launch. What would you say you must do when you're going to launch? I always get asked the question, what time of year is the best time to launch? What are your thoughts on timing?
Oh gosh, time of year. To be honest, I really wish I had this answer, but it really depends on your audience. And that is honestly, it's not a cop-out answer. It's actually true. I think the definite times to avoid, I guess, would be okay, this can be a bit of a 50-50, but really close to the holidays around Christmas time, as well as New Year's, because normally that's when most people are broke. But then again, that's when a lot of people do sales. But the thing is, you don't want to compete on price for something. So to be honest, I'm actually launching in the next few months. So at the time of this recording, I would be launching something. So so I'm doing it around September because it's not too close to the holiday season, and it's enough time for my students. So I'd be having a group program, and I'm taking them through a 6-week process. So I want them to be able to learn like all of these things before it gets too overwhelming around the holidays. So I would do then, and also around February to March as well, because people would like, they would have gone back to work. They would have restarted their businesses after the holidays, and they would have gotten back into the groove. So personally, I would say around February to March and after summer, because remember, during summertime, a lot of your audience is like, they're likely to be parents, right? So they've got their hands full with their kids, and so going to launch like around like after they're going back to school, I think would be a good idea. So February, March, September, October. That's just my honest opinion.
Yeah. And I love those dates. That's exactly when I launch personally. I'm always in September. And then I sometimes will go the end of January into February. And I have done May launches in the past, but next year we're probably looking to stop doing our May launches, only because a lot of times it's closer to the middle of May. And I really find that a lot of the times parents are in the thick of the end of school and they can't focus on anything else that's going out there. And then they're thinking about their summer and they're kind of just not in the mindset of learning and being able to devote that time, because then they're going to have the kids home. So I think that that's great. But I also love the fact that you talked about it's about your audience. Because I know, for example, I have a lot of food bloggers that are kind of in the healthy, whereas January is their sweet spot. That's when everybody's looking to kind of like fix their diets, and my fitness people definitely.
Exactly.
So yes, those are great. I love that recommendation for sure. Now, when you go to put together your launch during those times of year, do you feel like there is a go-to launch sequence that just articulates across all niches, or is it really dependent upon each individual product?
Whether you're a seasoned podcaster or just thinking of starting a podcast, you need to listen to Buzzcast from the folks at Buzzsprout. Here we go! Buzzcast covers everything a podcaster should know, from marketing strategies and how to make money from your podcast to the latest and greatest tech and industry insights to keep you on the cutting edge. Follow Buzzcast by clicking the link in the description or go to buzzcast.buzzsprout.com and keep podcasting.
Okay, this is a yes or no question, because the thing is there are so many different types of launches. So for example, one of my clients right now, she's launching a template shop. That's very different than one of my other clients who's launching an online course, So I guess it really depends on what you're actually launching. And I personally specialize in online courses and group programs. So my launch strategy may not be as effective as somebody who's launching an e-commerce store, for example. Yeah.
Yes. No, that makes total sense. And I feel like a lot of my audience, honestly, would be courses. And if it was a product, it would probably be like an ebook or something of that nature.
Yeah, that's different. So I think, but the thing is with all launches though, I definitely agree with the framework that I just mentioned. So is that all right if I actually go into why I've called it the Black Belt Ethos? Is that okay?
Absolutely, please.
So, okay, I do Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, which is a type of martial arts, and I absolutely love it for many reasons, but this podcast episode isn't about my love for martial arts, but it's actually also understanding the meaning behind it. So what the black belt symbolizes is infinite pursuit, and I love that. And the thing is, in certain martial arts, I believe Jiu-Jitsu is one of them, that it can take up to 60 years in order to get the highest rank of black belt. So it's not like you just get black belt and then you're done. There's like multiple ranks within black belt. So it's like first dan, second dan, and like the 10th dan is the highest. And I just found that really fascinating, because every black belt is somebody who is, it's a white belt who never gave up. They're always willing to relearn the fundamentals. So, really looking to master. And that is the kind of clients who I serve. They're people who just want to, better themselves. They want to improve the lifestyles of the people that they serve. And I just absolutely love that. And the thing is with ethos. So ethos is one of the 3 pillars of persuasion. So there's ethos, pathos, and logos. And logos is with logic. So if someone is extremely logical, they're going to be swayed by you if you use facts and figures. With pathos is someone who really understands, communication skills, and they're able to get an emotional response from their people. So they're the people who, if they make you cry and you're like, oh yeah, this person's like, really amazing. But then a lot of people actually miss out the ethos. And that's something that I do really want to hone in on, is the fact that a lot of people don't have their ethos dialed in. And so ethos is all about your credibility and your character. So what I was mentioning earlier about brand DNA is that, there are a lot of people who can actually just take a course and then technically they could teach it and regurgitate that information, right? But the thing is, they don't have the ethos in place. They may have the logos, they may have the pathos, with the emotional stuff and the logical stuff, but they don't have the credibility in order to teach it, despite the fact that they know it. And so that's why I want everybody listening right now to, really think about what makes you you, because that is your ethos. That's the thing that's going to set you apart. And so that's why I called it the black belt ethos, because the people who I serve, they are people who are in infinite pursuit of excellence, and they do truly value understanding themselves and the people they serve. And but the thing is, with regardless of which launch style that you do, I do believe that those are the fundamentals for any launch. Just understanding and being willing to listen to your customer, understanding yourself, and just really seeing like what is the new solution that you're bringing to the marketplace. And let me just reassure anybody who's like, oh, but I can't reinvent the wheel, or like, oh, it's going to take me forever to come up with a completely original idea. And I think originality is kind of that's actually not the thing that matters, with an absolute original idea, but an original spin is different. Because I'll give you an example. Yesterday, my little sister moved back from university, and before she was like freaking out because she was saying to me like, oh, I've got so many books and we can't lift it. We can't lift the box. And I was like, why don't you just split the weight of the books into different boxes? So it's not just one super heavy box full of books. And then she was like, oh, I don't know. I don't think that's going to work. And then I find out that my auntie proposed the same idea. And she said, oh, that's a fantastic idea. And I was like, excuse me, I already said that to you. And so that just goes to show that for some people, it's going to go in one ear and out the other. But the way that you position a message, the way that you position a product, that is what's going to be unique. So don't put too much pressure on yourself on creating an absolutely new solution, but put your own spin. So it seems like a new solution, but actually it's just a way that you've repurposed an already existing idea, but in a way that feels unique to the person who's on the receiving end.
Love it. Oh my goodness. So smart. First it made me giggle because of course, when you were talking about your sister not listening to you, it actually made me think of when my husband gives me a suggestion and I don't listen to him, I listen to someone else that says the exact same thing. And I'm sure all the women that are listening to this are chuckling because they've done that themselves. But I also started to giggle in the beginning when you said jujitsu, because no one else can see you because we're just doing the audio, but I can see you. You already told me you're 5'4" and you're tiny. So me picturing you doing jujitsu, I'm like, oh my goodness gracious. But I loved the example that you gave as far as ethos. I've never really heard it said that way and said so eloquently, because I will often say, your zone of genius and who you are will set it apart. It's your personality that sells, but it's just so eloquent. I love it.
So glad it came across that way. Sometimes I just don't know that my mind's like running a million miles, but thank you. I'm so glad.
No, of course. Oh my goodness. Okay. So, I think that like is such a good point when you're talking about like setting yourself apart, because I think that even when people do have good ideas, they'll often get into this, and bloggers do this often, and some of them may get upset with me, but I'm going to say it anyways. We get crazy about our posts and our recipes and our DIYs that if someone makes it, they're copying me and it's mine. And I'm not saying like when people steal your photos, it's totally different. But when they people have similar ideas and spins on things. It's just how they tie it into their personality, their ethos, like you said, is what's going to make it different and why people are going to be drawn to you over them. So if we spent less time worrying about what if someone takes this and more about, I know who I am and what I bring to my audience, we're going to be more likely to be able to solve more problems and really connect with our audience. Because really it's about that connection, right?
Mm-hmm. And service. And actually, there's something that I do want to mention, and it's something that I learned from a tech entrepreneur, because before all of this, I did do some event management a couple of years ago, and this lesson has stuck in my head for years, and I call it the rooftop reminder. So basically, there was this tech entrepreneur. He was teaching other people who wanted to start a tech business, and then there was one person in the audience who asked, "But Vince, what about if someone has the same idea as me?" And then, so this guy, Vince, he's a tech millionaire. So he said to me, or sorry, not said to me, said to everybody, it's like, okay, let's just say that I want to start a business where I replace all of the roofs, in the world with solar panels. Do you really think that I can reach all of the roofs? And we were like, well, no. And he was like, exactly. There are billions of roofs in this world. So actually, if there's somebody else, if there's another company who also does it, then that just spreads the mission. And so what you just said, Jenny, that, if we're only thinking about what if people copy us, what if people copy my idea? First of all, they can never take the idea away from you, because you know the origins of where this idea came from. And be honest, if you really want to share your gifts with the world, if you really want the world to know this amazing apple pie, wouldn't you want more people to be able to taste that as opposed to getting the credit for it? I think that's what's really important. It's just
it's that story that goes with it, right? That you said, that knowing that the mission and the purpose, someone can copy a recipe, but if they don't have that higher purpose behind that recipe, it's likely not to connect to the people that you want it to connect to. And that's ideally what we're trying to really create. I think that we often lose track of that because we're so hyper-focused on followers and views and reach and all of these things, when if we would just focus on the story behind it, of the problem that we're solving with the content, it would make we would have that connection, and we would have those loyal followers that are going to continue to interact and engage with us, which is really what it's supposed to be about.
Exactly. Yeah.
So because launching often, of course, goes hand in hand with selling, is there a way, because I know some of my audience is so used to creating that recipe and not being used to having to sell their product. Mm-hmm. How do you have clients that need help getting over that mindset of you have to sell? Do you have a way that makes it through your launch less salesy and more about solving the problem?
Ooh, that's a good question. Okay, so to kind of move away from the salesiness or the fear of salesiness, basically. So, okay, this may not sound like a direct answer, but trust me, it is. So this is a lesson from one of my mentors in the past. He told me that hell on earth is meeting the person you could have been. And while I agree, I believe there's a much more deeper layer to that. And that is, hell on earth is meeting all of the people that you could have helped. And
so good.
Thank you. I mean, to be honest, whenever I feel a bit off track, I always think of that. I picture myself in a field, in an empty field, and I picture myself being surrounded by people who I could have helped, and they have these sad looks on their faces. Because what you've got to realize is that your message, it reaches people. You impact people more than you know, because there's always going to be people who will not tell you that they follow your stuff, or that they read your blog, they listen to your podcast. There's just some people who are forever going to be unknown to you, but it doesn't mean that your impact doesn't matter. It does matter. And your message, it's your duty to put it out there. And yes, you you are going to have to sell, because if you don't sell, then you're going to run out of business. And if you run out of business, you stop impacting people. And when you stop impacting people, some people will just simply give up without you. And so you got to realize that you are someone's salvation. And I think a lot of people forget that, the extent of their impact on people. It could be simply just listening to a podcast episode, but it can be make or break for them, that you don't know, like where they are in their lives and their business in that very moment that they come across your content. And when you're providing them an opportunity to better themselves even more by investing in in one of your products, your services, through an online course, that is an opportunity for them to actually get out of their own rut. And I think when you actually take the pressure off of yourself, that is all me, and if you focus on serving, and you realize that if someone is going to put down their hard-earned money, they've got skin in the game. Therefore, they're going to improve their lives on their own terms, and you just help to enable that. That is all. So once you let go of that worry about it being salesy, and you just start seeing it as you're providing an opportunity, then why not? Because think about it. Like Jenny, I'm not sure about yourself. I'm sure you have invested in like courses and programs yourself, but if you actually add up all of your investments, I think you'd be like, yeah, okay, I would like to earn some of that back, because you painstakingly have gone through trial and error. You've worked with a lot of people. You have wisdom to share, and it can help people. So I think when we just focus on service as opposed to self-importance, then I think that fear will just fall away.
I love it. I could not have said that better myself. It was so eloquently put. Like, it just really is. It's that mindset of serving. And once you can just, that's your purpose and that's what you're doing, it's not sales, it's helping, right? So good. So now you have a cheat sheet. That is more than a cheat sheet. It is, I opened it and I was like, oh my goodness, this is genius. I so am using this freebie for myself. Sorry, but I am. Can you explain a little bit about your freebie and what you're offering up to my audience? Because it's so helpful.
Thank you. Jenny got an early sneak peek before it's even available to the public. So this is the successful launch walkthrough guide. So I love as much as possible for to help people and walk them through step by step, because that's really my style. I love literally like leading people by the hand. And it is my 5 core phases for a profitable and purpose-driven launch. So basically, I break down the 5 key phases. I'm going to quickly list them now, and then I'll give you some information on where to find it. So phase 1 is all about pre-launch planning and validation. So what I mentioned earlier about H2H touch, that's all about, listening and seeing if there's actually demand for something that you want to create. So that is phase 1, and there's a lot to go into it, but I'm just going to quickly run through it. So that's phase number 1, pre-launch planning. Phase 2 is creating your launch materials. So one of my clients, she hired me a week before her launch to write a sales page, and normally I would say no to something like that, but she really needed the help, and actually the mission that she had was incredible. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to do it. But she understood the impact that had on her team. It had a lot of stress on the team, and that's because the launch materials just weren't ready in the right order. So in phase 2, I'm going to list out a bunch of launch materials that you need. For example, a launch-oriented lead magnet. So if you need to build your list in order to build your audience that's going to, potentially buy in on your launch, you're going to need a targeted lead magnet, not just a random one. It needs to be aligned with your offer. You need a landing page for that. You need a sales page for your offer. You need a checkout page. You need launch emails. That's a lot. So that is phase number 2. Phase number 3, you've got all your materials. Now you just schedule them in and just keep your team in the loop. If it's just yourself and your virtual assistants, sorry, I just totally blanked. And if you have a virtual assistant or a bigger team than that, just make everybody aware on all of the dates where everything's going to be sent out to your audience. Phase 4, you actually launch. So surprisingly, this is just the day where your cart opens. So everything, pretty much all of the work, all the heavy lifting is actually in the pre-launch phase, which is the other 3. So when you go live for your launch, you just need to be present. That is it. And then phase number 5 is the post-launch wrap-up. So this is another phase that a lot of people miss out because they just launch like, oh, okay, let's either not launch again or, okay, let's try again. But the thing is, the post-launch wrap-up, when you're so close to your own launch, that is when everything you've just literally, you've gone through it and you want your memory to be as sharp as possible. And so this is a time where you sit down and debrief with your team and just to really see like what went well, what were the challenges that you faced, what could be improved for next time. And then actually, this is something that a lot of people would be so, they wouldn't want to do it. And that is to send out a feedback survey to all the people who didn't buy. So you may want your assistant to go through these responses if you don't want to hear personally yourself, because we're so close to our own creations. But actually getting the feedback and understanding why some people on your list just didn't buy, it just gives you some extra like ammunition on like the things to focus on and the things to eradicate, the objections to pre-handle the next time you launch. So those are the 5 phases. So quick recap on all the names. To pre-launch planning and validation. Phase 2, creating your launch materials. Phase 3, systemize and schedule. Phase 4, go live with your launch. And phase 5, to post-launch wrap-up. So those are the 5 key phases for a purposeful and profitable launch. And so I've got a walkthrough guide and it's got all the information of the things that you'll need, and of course some options of where you can go if you do need some extra help with that.
Perfect. And what we're going to do is we're going to link to that in the show notes. So please make sure you guys click over to the show notes so that you can make sure that you get this guide. So much information. And obviously that was just a brief overview of what's included. So you definitely want to make sure that you come over and get that. Where are the best places for my audience to find you, stalk you, and just listen to your accents?
Oh, okay. So let's start with the last one. To listen to this accent, whether it's British or not, because I've heard other things that my accent sounds a bit part South African, apparently. But if you would like to listen to this voice even more, I do have my own podcast. It's called the Quiet Rebels Podcast. And in a nutshell, it's all about being able to provide the space to help you own your message, own your worth, and just own your voice in both life and business. So that is the goal of my own podcast. And where you can best find me, if you go over to my website, Mai-kee.com, so it's MAIKEETSANG, where you'll also have the launch guide. And on my website, you'll also see some links to my social media. I'm definitely the most active on Instagram. So LinkedIn's just there, but but you're going to want to find me on Instagram because I am present with stories and, of course, to be able to chat with you as well if you want to drop me a DM. But yeah, just the Quiet Rebels podcast and my own website where you have links to everything else.
Perfect. And you guys know the drill. If you're listening to the podcast, give a screenshot on your Instagram stories and make sure you tag both of us. That is actually, Instagram is where Mai-kee and I actually met. Yes. We ended up direct messaging back and forth and just saw that it was such a good crossover. And I thought she would be an awesome guest because I know so many of you right now are trying to figure out the best way to launch a product and it can be overwhelming. And I just thought that it would be the perfect guest. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak with my audience. I appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun. And for those of you who, Jenny just mentioned that we met over Instagram. Jenny also has a episode over on my podcast that's going to be coming out in the next few weeks. So definitely keep an eye out for that. So follow us both on Instagram and you'll get all the deets and access to our little dance party that we did.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Jenny. Bye.
All right. Well, there you have it. Clearly, Mai-kee knows what she is talking about. I cannot say, I've said it multiple times during the interview, but her answers to my questions were just so eloquently delivered. Part of it, of course, I absolutely adored her accent, but her answers were just pure perfection. So if you haven't already, make sure that you hop over to the show notes to grab her freebie, as well as you guys know that I love when you share on Instagram stories. So if you're listening to the podcast, take a screenshot and put it up on Instagram stories. You can tag me at Jenny_Melrose. You can also tag Mai-kee, and her Instagram is MAIKEETSANG. You're definitely going to want to make sure to follow her on Instagram. That is where I met her, and she is just very active and engaged on her Instagram. If you haven't already left a review on iTunes, I would so appreciate it if you took the time to do that. It helps others find the podcast, but I also want to be able to thank you for putting up a review. So make sure that you use your Instagram handle on your review. All right, guys, until next time, I will see you all then.